Cross-elemental effects is something that I mentioned when I talked about Russia bringing something maybe new to elements going forward. Well, I think I may have been onto something when talking about elements, since Kuro's giant fucking dong finally remembered there's more to them within the first 10 minutes of 2.0. That is, they finally are remembering that they have negative statuses like Spectro Frazzle, which is the upgrade Rover gets, to units. This is now finally being talked about, and I think this is a big deal, so let me tell you why. But hang on, before I gush out, I need to more firmly enunciate my position first on why I've had issues with Wuthering Waves elements. It'll give more context for when I bust like Zanny's shirt. There's a more specific reason outside of the limited scope, and that was the functions not matching with enemies we fought and where we should be feeling it most. The elemental side of things felt like the literal last thing they got to after revising the vision of Wuthering Waves from CBT to launch, because of how incomplete it has been. 2.0 is fixing that aspect with the reintroduction of Spectro Frazzle being added to Rover as an upgrade. Again, this has been here since the start, but we could only see them from enemies. Enemies using elements as debuffs literally were about as useful as healthcare insurance companies. Fucking useless. Enemies in this game vary greatly. Either you kill them too fast so you never need to worry about the elemental things anyways, like in the overworld, you get one shot or two shot in the endgame modes, and even if I grant enemies my bussy on the altar to be beaten up, well, their attacks are either so infrequent it never hits max stacks for me to even really care, plus only specific attacks apply the debuff, or their pattern and AI is so mixed and semi-unaggressive that by the next time I do get hit by an attack that applies the element, the entire debuff is being restarted. So to show this, I use Thundering Mephis to see if I can get to max stacks of the Electro debuff, but you can also try this out with the Monkey or Tempest Mephis to see similar things. For these bosses, the only debuff semi-mattering is Electro Flare, as that is an attack debuff which could slow you down. Regardless, they are pretty hot and cold, and I think holograms are sort of the only area where the effect can be seen more visibly because of the additional attacks. But again, most of the time you're getting two-shot anyways. TLDR, we didn't use them, enemies seldomly use them, and when they had the opportunities to use them, it ultimately doesn't matter just because of how things are designed. So now that that's out of the way, why do I make Spectro Frazzle on Rover a big deal? Well, first off, we're already seeing upgrades and enhancements to Rover allowing them to stay relevant for longer for all players. This means Rover will essentially always be a reliable multi-tool to build up, and we can expect to see more enhancements as we go further, plus we have more elements to get to too, so Rover will just have a lot of utility all in one character for free!
I fucking love it!
Secondly, Spectro Frazzle in my opinion is probably one of the strongest effects in the game to start with because it is essentially just free damage from playing the character correctly, but since we are also seeing it in echoes, it's allowing for bigger support roles to be opened up with these debuffs, making your supports and sub DPS units way more valuable and flexible, assuming Kuro will be adding the rest of the debuffs. In case you forgot about these, let me tell you what they are, because I know you don't go back to read the tutorials, lamau. And if you do, and no, well, just skip to the fucking next timestamp. Havoc Bane, stacking AoE poison like burst of damage helping with high enemy density. Electro Flare, stacking attack debuff that will help with survivability. Arrow Erosion, stacking single target damage over time for chip damage and single target. Fusion Burst, reaching max stacks create an explosion burst of damage for a single target. Frost Chafe, movement speed reduction and freeze at max helping with crowd control, and Spectro Frazzle, damage over time that increases in damage depending on the stacks. All of these debuffs are now open to being added to kits of existing and future units with the potential of them spanning out in use, since Spectro, for example, as I've mentioned many other times, has other utility like time slow effects. That means characters like Kalkaro, Ling Yang, and Verena, if they get additions to their kits or can benefit uniquely from applying these debuffs, can utilize either different roles or strengthen the ones they occupy now.
But wait! There's more!
Because you know what I didn't mention? Weapons. Weapons are also now thrown into the mix, as the newest craftables also work off of negative statuses. In their case, it's an attack buff for 10 seconds if there's a negative status. But there's a lot of other ways statuses could be worked into weapons, providing more universal boosts that aren't taking up a character slot. Pairing debuff characters with strong sub-DPS characters could make them rise to being more viable main damage dealers, and pairing debuff weapons could accentuate more useful free-to-play options and team alternatives. The wonderful thing about it too is that all of these debuffs don't force you to work within a confined team composition, but on the other side, mono teams could potentially offer big surges for specific content. For example, Havoc Bane mono teams utilizing the newest Havoc set for outro burst damage, and Havoc Bane Poison could work really well in something like Pincer where there are a lot of enemies. I imagine something sort of like this clip from Destiny 2, where a gun explosion spreads poison and chains from it.
AoEing down entire groups of enemies with one explosion. Case in point.
To sum it all up, why I'm so excited and happy to see this small upgrade for Spectro Frazzle on Rover is that it's addressing the elemental side that was essentially absent since the start, as well as addressing the RPG side of things, the customizable side of things that all RPGs have. That's a big part of what makes RPGs and what makes them great. This is one of those key things that I think Wuthering Waves has been missing since the start, kind of like your father. This feels like daddy finally coming back from getting milk, but instead of coming back with just some plain ass 2% milk, we're getting chocolate, strawberry, almond, and breast milk.
Breast milk, you made my day.
Let's fucking go.